As the clock ticked down and the game entered its final minutes, Doc Rivers, head coach of the Milwaukee Bucks, was faced with a pivotal decision. Should he trust the adjustments made and push forward, or should he alter the course in the hopes of gaining the advantage? Do you just start Game 3 and trust that adjustment we made and think about it? We'll just see. We have time. We have 48 hours, Rivers said cryptically in the aftermath of a gut-wrenching loss. I'm not going to tell you what I'm doing right now because I don't know, But we'll figure it out. I'm very confident about this series. Very. Confidence is a powerful thing. But what could have made Rivers so sure of his team's chances, especially after a game in which they found themselves trailing by as many as 15 with just 5 minutes left? The situation was grim, yet something in that final stretch gave the Bucks a sliver of hope. Over the first 2 games, the Pacers had been relentlessly attacking the Bucks' starting center, exploiting defensive gaps and forcing Doc to reduce his minutes by 20% in Game 2. Despite this strategic shift, the Bucks still couldn't pull off a victory. And to make matters worse, Kyle Kuzma had joined a very dubious club, failing to register a single point, assist, rebound, steal, or block in over 20 minutes of play in Game 1. The statistics were ugly, and the pressure was mounting, but in the final moments of Game 2, something clicked for the Bucks. With the Pacers up by 15, the Bucks mounted a furious comeback, going on a 13-0 run that brought the game within 2 points. For the first time in what had been a brutal series, it felt like the Bucks had a legitimate shot at this. What changed? It was all about Giannis. The key to the Bucks' success on offense is their ability to leverage the gravitational pull of their superstar. On one pivotal possession, as Bobby Portis set a high ball screen, the Pacers' defense collapsed on Giannis, leaving Portis open for a wide-open 3. He nailed it. The very next possession saw similar tactics. Giannis drawing the defense, allowing Portis to get another open look. On the second attempt, despite a better defensive response from the Pacers, Giannis' strength became undeniable. He tossed away his defender to grab the rebound and score a crucial putback. From that point on, the game was no longer just a fight for survival. It was a battle of chess moves, with each side trying to outmaneuver the other. On the following possession, the Pacers tried to collapse on Giannis again, but this time Giannis saw a chance. With just one defender on him, he stormed to the basket, drawing the end one opportunity that shifted momentum back to the Bucks. The tide was turning, and despite a loud and raucous crowd urging on the Pacers, Milwaukee was gaining ground. As the game progressed, it became evident that the Bucks had found a rhythm that the Pacers were struggling to contain. Damian Lillard, despite his recent injury woes, was still capable of creating opportunities. A skip dribble by Dame sliced through the defense, setting him up to make a brilliant pass to Portis for another wide-open 3. Despite the best efforts of Indiana's defense, Milwaukee was beginning to exploit defensive lapses with surgical precision. This is where the adjustments made by Rivers began to pay dividends. He had seen the flaws in the Pacers' defense. Indiana, despite their efforts, couldn't seem to handle the Bucks' pick and rolls or manage the rotations when Giannis was in the post. One particular play stood out when Lillard, handling the ball at the top, was able to draw 4 defenders to him. This allowed Gary Trent Jr. to get open in the corner, where he buried a massive 3-pointer, closing the gap even further. Now Trent's shooting, particularly his 5 threes in the third quarter alone, was an anomaly, but it showed the potential of what the Bucks could achieve when their shooters were in rhythm. And when you have Giannis pulling the defense apart, shooters like Trent and Portis become that much more dangerous. But it wasn't all about offense. As the Bucks continued to tighten the screws defensively, it became clear that Indiana had major issues when facing Giannis and company. The Pacers' defense, though solid for the most part, was often caught in scramble mode, with players not communicating well enough to cover the wide-open shooters on the perimeter. On multiple occasions, it seemed like the Pacers' defenders didn't know whether to close out on Portis or give help to Turner guarding Giannis, leaving open lanes that the Bucks exploited. Of course, this wasn't just an issue of defensive breakdowns. The Pacers' offense was putting pressure on the Bucks as well, particularly in half-court sets. The Pacers had found success in forcing mismatches, especially when they were able to use a high screen to get Lopez caught in a switch. On a few plays, Turner was able to target Lopez in one-on-one situations, using his speed and ball handling to get by the slower defender. The Bucks simply couldn't keep up in these moments, and the Pacers capitalized on their superior spacing. That said, the Pacers' skittish success came with its own set of challenges. For one, Indiana struggled to maintain their lead as the game wore on. Their offensive consistency started to fade, and despite some strong individual performances from players like Tyrese Halliburton and Miles Turner, The Pacers couldn't keep up with the relentless pressure from the Bucks in the final minutes. The Bucks had turned up the intensity and the Pacers couldn't answer. But the critical turning point, the one moment that would define the game, was when the Bucks managed to stymie Indiana's ball movement. Despite Indiana's penchant for moving the ball quickly, the Bucks did a much better job of closing out on shooters in the final minutes, forcing bad shots and keeping the Pacers from generating clean looks. Now it's clear the series is going the distance. Game 3 will be critical. The Pacers have shown they can win with their quick ball movement and shooting, but they've also shown vulnerability when faced with Milwaukee's star power and defensive prowess. Meanwhile, the Bucks have to continue playing to their strengths, getting Giannis downhill and using their shooting to stretch Indiana's defense. Rivers' confidence might seem unshakable, but he knows what's at stake. The next few games will come down to execution. Can the Bucks get their shooters going? Can they make the right defensive adjustments? Will Lopez find a way to contribute offensively without sinking the team defensively? It's all up in the air, but if Game 2 is any indication, this series will be one to remember. And the Bucks may have been behind the 8 ball, but they've got the talent and grit to claw their way back into it. As the series shifts to Milwaukee for Game 3, the Pacers will have to prove they can hold their ground under the immense pressure that's coming their way. One thing is certain, and this series will be decided by the smallest margins, and the final result could be anyone's game. The next 48 hours will shape the future of this thrilling matchup.